Mr. Munir, it will be.
Assalamu alaikum wa
Wa alaikum
rahmatullah.
assalam wa rahmatullah.
Concerning the reality of punishment in hell, whether it can be physical or only mental.
Well, this is best understood by posing you another question. Will the heaven be a physical reality or something else? If heaven is physical in the sense that actually you have nothing else to eat but to have honey and milk and some fruits, and you live in those gardens where the streams flow, and you have nothing else to do but to live with some ladies and some young boys and honey and milk of the worldly nature. If you can digest this concept to be a physical concept, then for the hell to be physical is nothing wrong. I mean, it's no wonder why the hell shouldn't be physical either. But these are not physical phenomena, because the Holy Quran itself explains it, that they are not physical phenomenon. And the milk is described as a milk which doesn't go sour. The wine is described as a wine which doesn't intoxicate. So what is left of that wine if it does not intoxicate? So again, there are so many indications to let us know that the heaven and hell both, as described, are not a physical phenomenon. Apart from other things, the Holy Quran describes as Jannah arduhu samawati wal ard. The heaven encompasses the whole universe, the whole creation, as-samawati wal ard. When the companions of the Holy Prophet heard this, they immediately thought of hell, where that hell would be if the heaven and earth are covered by heaven alone. Heaven means the sky and earth. So the answer was yes, both the heaven and the hell occupy the same space, but you can't understand this. This was the answer given by Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now this answer positively does not belong to that age, not to the century afterwards, not to the century afterwards. It belongs right now to this age, when three-dimensional concept has enlarged the concept of the universe, many-dimensional concept, and now we can conceive that within this space different phenomenon can take place simultaneously without ever interfering with each other, without ever coming into contact with each other, of a completely different nature. As I have been telling you many a time before, right here in this space there is music, there is dancing, there are pictures, there are news being read, and everything in every language in this very space which we occupy, and we have no sign whatsoever of these things happening, no interference from them, or nor we can interfere into them. So all this phenomena tells us that the answer of Hazur Akram sallallahu alaihi wasallam was most scientific answer, so much so that nobody could believe at that time what he was, nobody could first of all conjecture what he was talking about, nor could he believe if he was made to understand. So how can that be physical? Because hell covers both the heaven and earth, and it is here too. You don't see any heat, don't feel any heat, and you don't see any gardens of bliss, while the heaven is also here. So that shows the dimensions are different. So I only accepted the first part of your question, not the second part. Are they mental? No, I don't say that. Mental as compared to physical would create a different picture in your mind. I don't say they are mental as against physical. I say the universe is different. Everything would be real, but on a different dimension and on a different plane altogether. So now we can come to the conclusion, as was made by Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself, that no eye has ever seen it, no ear has ever heard it. I mean, that is beyond the conception of human beings. So to believe in the physical phenomena, being whose and Wilman and all that, and waiting for a corporal Jannah or a corporal hell, it is just a fool's paradise or a fool's hell. It has nothing to do with the Quranic concept. Right? Any other question, please? Yes, Dr. Mujibul Haq Sahib. Where is Salim? Is he here?
He is in London, sir, but not here. He has moved to Tooting.
He was not here last night either, because he can't sit still for very long. He has to ask a question or two. If he were here, he would definitely come forward. Yes.
True, sir. In today's Guardian newspaper, there was a news item regarding the birth of Jesus.
Yes.
This is the month, it is 21st today, and the Christian world is indulging.
Are you a Guardian fan, Guardian subscriber?
Yes, sir, I read Guardian.
Inclined towards Labour or what?
I am non-political person, but just read Guardian.
Yes.
In that, sir, I was going to bring the news item here to read, but
But just tell me the gist.
yes, sir, it says that person who has done some research. Of course, we have told the world before, our Jamaat, that Jesus was not born on 25th of December because it is proved. They put forward
The writer of that article
Yes.
admitted this,
Yes, sir.
that the so-called date of birth of Jesus is totally false,
It is false.
and it has been proved beyond doubt.
That's right, sir.
And to what proof was he referring?
Well, sir, he gave two arguments. One is that that the shepherds who were grazing their
Exactly.
cattle,
Yes.
they said that they were not allowed to graze of course, to enter the fields when they were plowed, and because at that time it is usually the time of December or winter season. They were only allowed to graze during the time when the crop was harvested or reaped, and they were allowed to graze afterwards. There were two reasons. One is that their cattle were grazed. Secondly, the ground was fertilized as well by the cattle, by the grazing cattle. So it couldn't have happened in the time of December or winter season.
When the field should have been empty.
Right, sir.
I guess, yes.
So that is one argument. Secondly, they say that although also the astronomy has proved that the star.
But this argument has always been there.
Yes.
I mean, I thought perhaps he was referring to some new discovery, new argument.
Secondly, he had some.
I mean, this evidence
Yes, sir.
has been there right throughout history.
Yes, sir.
We have been pointing this out.
Probably he got
He
from us.
may have got this from Ahmadiyya literature. This is what I'm wondering.
Right,
Yes.
sir. But they didn't mention the source.
Yes.
But it is, of course, a non-Muslim scholar, as they say.
Right.
And he is giving lectures in Middle East these days. It was in Jerusalem, probably, or Bethlehem, in the area,
Right.
where he was giving.
So the second argument
was the astronomy. He said also proved the same, that Halley's comet. He said that it was the time when it was sighted there at that time. It was not the time in December.
And what was the time according to him?
In summer, sir.
No, what time?
Exactly, he doesn't mention, but it says that it was in summer time. It was sighted, and
Yes, this is exactly what the Holy Quran says.
yes, sir.
I mean, we infer from it positively
Right, sir.
that the time was for that of the ripening of date,
Yes, sir.
you know, date palms were giving fruit at that time. So that shows positively that it was not December, because in December there are no dates. So that's a good article to quote in our support. Why not contact that author and write to him a personal letter and find out more about it, the sources, etc. Or you may write a letter to, is it Guardian, Manchester Guardian? Yes. London Guardian. You write a letter to the editor referring to, with reference to this article, and say this is exactly the verdict of the Holy Quran as well. It's very interesting that previously the Christian scholars were denying this and alleging that the Holy Quran is making stories about it. And now they themselves have discovered that the Holy Quran was right after all. That would be an interesting letter, if they publish it, of course. So, Mr. Imran Khan, have you thought of something at last? Two things, yes. Please. Well, you can lower it to your height.
The first one is that concerning Dr. Mujibul Haq's question.
Yes. Come closer to the microphone,
Even
please.
our school, which is a Christian one,
Yes.
they even now say that Jesus was born in autumn. They teach it in their lessons.
That's right, yes.
The
They
second-
teach it in the
yes,
lessons.
in the RS
very
lessons.
interesting. Yes.
The second thing is, when I was once talking to a boy called Sammy Smelt about existence of God, he, after
About
that,
what?
the existence of God.
Yes, yes, yes.
After I proved to him that God was there and he accepted it. But then he said to me, but then I can't accept how God is there, who made him, and how was he there? And I said, it is beyond my comprehension, but I'll...
You see, you tell him that if he doesn't believe in God because of this objection, he can't believe in him himself. He can't believe in anything else, because the same objection will rise against that. If something is proved not to exist because the question remains unsolved, who created that thing, then that first creator is out of question. The same question would not die with that. It would apply to the next situation. And again the same dilemma will be faced by that boy and such people. If there was no creator, who created him? So why not deny his own existence and the existence of everything else? So if you can believe in this creation without a creator, why can't you believe in the existence of a creator without a creator?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Speak a bit more loudly.
Yes, just one point on to what Imran just said. I think it's well recognized by Christians that Jesus wasn't born on 25th of December. It's more or less common knowledge now.
It is now being recognized,
Yes.
not well recognized, because they have been having debates on this issue with Ahmadis for many years in the beginning. It was the Ahmadiyya point of view. First of all, we represented this. It was raised by Ahmadis particularly that your date of birth of Jesus is wrong, and Ahmadis based their argument on this verse of the Holy Quran. That period was that of fruiting of date palm trees, and the Holy Quran couldn't have mentioned that Mary was told to shake the tree trunk so that she should drop some fruit on her. That is the reason why I was interested in this.
Anyway, my main question was concerning the work of Hazrat Jalaluddin Rumi.
Yes. What about it?
I was reading a few pages of his work, and at the beginning I came across an interesting story which he relates in the Masnavi. It concerns that...
Are you reading Masnavi now? Is it in English?
Yes, it's translated.
Translation in English. The full Masnavi?
Yes.
Right. Yes.
Anyway, at the beginning there's a story about a king who hated Christianity and he wanted some means of destroying it. And so his chief advisor or someone like that thought that a good plan would be that if the king was to somehow attack himself, I mean not the king but his advisor, on the grounds that he had become a Christian, and in this way he would then run away to the Christians and they'd accept him obviously because he'd been persecuted as a Christian. And once he'd been accepted by the Christian community, he would then start causing divisions and schisms and start different movements within the Christian community. Anyway, this plan was successful, and eventually what he did was that he would speak to certain groups of Christians and give them certain directions secretly, and then go to another group of Christians and give them conflicting
instructions.
And he would tell them not to talk to each other. Anyway, and this plan eventually worked, and I think there were 12 divisions within the Christian movement. I'm just wondering what the interpretation of this could mean, if you know at all, if you have any ideas.
Isn't it obvious? The downfall of the religion starts with schisms, and this is how they come to be created. To begin with, quiet propaganda is directed in a certain section, and different people in there, although the person responsible is supposed to be one, but that person is in fact no person. He is a representation of this phenomenon as such. So this is how the schisms take place. In different areas, different messages spread, different interpretations are given, so that one religion begins to be split into many, and then it begins to weaken as well. This is the obvious explanation.
Yes. This is what I wanted to find out, whether there was a general thing, because I remember that...
I am not referring to any particular incident in history.
Yes.
Of course, no such thing happened there. What he does is, by way of stories and in interesting anecdotes, he lets us understand a message, while all the time we are interested and absorbed in that story. And he has a very interesting way of creating a situation where the message is exactly the opposite. For instance, when he creates certain sexual scenes, if you read those stories, to begin with, you will be horrified that Maulana Rum, such a great saint, and he is writing these stories which are obnoxious to the taste of a common person of decency. And one feels like reading, a sex maniac's fiction writing or something like that. But ultimately, when you reach the end, the effect left on you is exactly the opposite. It leaves a sense of horror with what happened. So this was his way of doing things, so that people who are inclined in the direction of certain sins, they find these stories very interesting to begin with, and they read them with interest, and they run along him for a while. Then ultimately, during that discourse, he kills them. This is, when not understood, creates a very wrong impression of Rome. Once somebody, a political leader of some class, came to see me, and he gave me a book on the explanation of Maulana Rum, and said, I have come to leave it with you, you can keep it, I can't tolerate such a book. He said, I am really surprised why people hold him in such reverence, or what you call it, and respect him. He is a man of such low character. He has written this and that and that, and he had flagged those pages with these stories I have just mentioned. So I pitied him. I told him, look here, you don't understand him. You don't know the sort of person he was. You are coming. So Maulana Rumi should be read with very great caution. He is one of the holiest men that century ever produced, and one of the greatest Sufis of his time. So his stories always carry a certain message, which message he takes from the Holy Quran. The clothing of that message is a completely non-Holy Quranic clothing, but that was the society he was addressing. He wanted to attract such a society to the Holy Quran as was non-Quranic in its character. So he adopts a way of moving. What's that English idiom? Moving with, running with the hound and the other way around. Running with the hare and hunting with the hound or something. What's that?
That's what it is.
Yes, running with the hare and hunting with the hound or something like that. Some people have both the things to themselves. They run with the hare as if they are his companion, want to save him, but ultimately they shoot him down. They run with the hound, that is, they hunt him down. So this is the style of Maulana Rumi. He runs with the hare of crime for a while, but with the intention that ultimately he is going to hound him down. So these stories belong to that part. This is why he says about himself, Masnavi ye, Manavi ye Maulavi, Hast Quran dar Hadith e Pahlavi. That it is that Zuban e Pahlavi. That in the language of Persian, the Masnavi of Maulana Rumi is the Quran itself. Of course it is a very tall claim, we don't agree that it is the Quran, but what he meant to convey was that fundamentally his ideas and beliefs have been taken from the Holy Quran.
While on the subject, can I just ask, what does the term Sufi actually mean?
Sufi?
Yes.
That I already have discussed here. It's a term which is generally applied to the esoterics, those who do not believe on the surfaces of the messages. They want to delve deeper and go underground or swim underground in the subcurrents and translate the message quite differently from the apparent message. Some people among the Christians believe that Christianity as taught to the people ordinarily was not the Christianity which was taught by Jesus Christ. There was an undercurrent of Christian message which was conveyed to the very chosen few, and that undercurrent has been carried throughout the history, generation after generation, again to those chosen few. So they are the real Christians who are living unknown, undetected, unobserved by the rest of the world. And Sufis also, when they came into being, gradually on this I have already spoken, the historical background of Sufism, why they really came into being as sects and something. Like they're not one sect but many sects of Sufis. On that I have already spoken. But now the point is the Sufis also fundamentally believe that Sharia, when I'm talking of these Sufis, I'm talking of the Sufis of the later times. Those who are the founders of certain sects in Sufism, it was not their belief. Gradually, later on, the Sufism was understood to be a message of the Holy Quran which has been kept hidden by the mullah and by the people of the letter who only see the surfaces according to these Sufis, and the underground message is different. That message is not different in its essence, that is to create piety and holiness and nearness of God, but that message can be delivered and translated into action without going into the formalities of Sharia. This was the first important deviation they made from the right path. They thought holiness and piety, saintliness, they are all things to be pursued, of course, but not in the manner as Mullah believes, to practice the Holy Quran in word and letter. They thought that spirit could be practiced without strictly following the form. But ultimately, they themselves landed into a form of a different nature altogether. They taught zikr in a certain way, to remember God not in the way Hazrat Rasul Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam did, by saying prayers and focusing his attention entirely upon the formal prayer as we know it, but they thought by remembering your master, whom you are following as the leader of the sect. For instance, this is the view of the one sect. They say tasawwur-e-shaykh, that is to say, they visualize what their peer or the master Sufi is like. You conceive his personality and try to lose yourself into his personality. Thereby you will lose yourself into God as if in a package deal, because your master as such is lost into God. So losing yourself into that master of yours, you will ultimately be delivered to God as a whole. This sort of concept is called tasawwur-e-shaykh. And the other one, that is called Naqshbandi, is slightly different, but fundamentally it's the same. They say you first conceive of your Sufi master, of his goodnesses, of his character, and then imprint him upon your heart. Once you have imprinted him upon your heart and your personality, that naqsh is now there forever, indelible naqsh. Naqsh means a print. So they are called Naqshbandis. Similarly, other Sufis try to create paths other than the paths of Sharia to reach, according to their claim, the same goal. And they thought these were the undercurrents of Islam which already existed at the time of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they were carried from that time on to our time by these esoteric scholars who right from the start understood that Islam really means this, and that is just a form for the commoners. They thought this form was necessary only for the beginners, the commoners, the common herd of people who don't understand finer things. So this Sufism is a sort of, according to their claim, an undercurrent of Islamic message without that form.
Thank you.
Please. Yes, please, Dar Sahib. Are you Mr. Bashir Dar?
Yes, Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Because I don't live here, so I don't see you very often. And my question is that according to modern psychology, which actually stems from the Vienna school of Freud, that if you suppress your tensions and emotions, the consequence is psychoneurosis, neurotic illnesses. And the Holy Quran says, وَالْقَاذِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ. So how will you correlate these two ideologies?
No, like this, I got it. Number one, the creator is not Freud, but the creator is Allah. So he knows his creation best. So you should frame your question differently. You should frame your question how far Freud is wrong if the Holy Quran conveys a different thing altogether. And if the Holy Quran conveys a thing as you have understood correctly, and Freud differs, whether Freud is wrong or your understanding of either Freud or of the Holy Quran is wrong, and there is no contradiction. This should be how the question should be rightly framed. Because you believe in the Holy Quran to be the word of God, so after that you don't have to correlate the Holy Quran with every Tom, Dick and Harry or his philosophies which keep on changing. So number one, you should understand that the Freudian era is over, in the sense that most of what he said has been proved to be wrong. The very fundamentals have been proved to be wrong. And the psychology is expanded in many other regions as well. New explanations are put forward. New principles are being evolved. So Freud is no longer a threat to any religion. But here too, there are people, psychologists, who differ with this concept of Freud, and they have their own way of differences. But as far as the Holy Quran is concerned, you have not correctly understood the message of the Holy Quran. The Holy Quran not only speaks of this, but speaks in another instance of giving vent to your emotions in a different way. Holy Quran does not teach suppression. You have only quoted one verse, but you have completely missed another verse speaking on the same subject. For instance, which says, not one verse, so many verses in fact, which says that innama ashku bassi wa huzuni ilallah. When I suppress my emotions with regard to human beings, that does not mean that I suppress them altogether entirely. I direct them entirely to my Lord. And I speak of everything to Him. Now this is the comparison now. According to Freud, when he says you should not suppress your emotions, this may lead to many problems and many dilemmas for the human society, and new measurement of right and good, and how the criminal should be dealt with, and whether he should be permitted to give vent to his emotions and emotional instincts to strike somebody, or he should suppress and fall ill because of that. There will be no answer to that. In fact, if you accept Freud in totality, then the question will not end up there. All right, you relieve yourself, but you relieve yourself at what cost? At whose sacrifice? At the cost of others, at the sacrifice of the whole society. And if you suppress them there and later on go to a psychiatrist and unburden yourself before him, that is one situation which can be considered to be a compromise situation. But number one, that is not what Freud preached. What he preached was you remain pure and simple by giving vent to everything that comes to your mind and acting accordingly. If you feel like, for instance, why not theft then? Why not running away with others' wives and children and sisters and properties and everything? Because that is emotion, a genuine emotion in some many people. And if they suppress it, they will fall ill, according to Freud. So there should be no suppression. That means total anarchy in the world of human relationship. Complete unlimited anarchy. Total chaos. And if not then why that suppression? And who is going to limit that suppression and direct the society that you can suppress that far and not further. Will the right of, that is religion, will that right be taken over by a psychologist, which was first exercised by a person who claimed that he was from God? Even if that right is taken by a psychologist, the question of suppression will immediately crop up there, and the same dilemma will be faced. So it's so hollow, that Freudian philosophy, that I can't believe how people have been taking it seriously. Again, as I've said, if you accept a compromise situation, that all right, of course, you should give vent to your emotions, but in a controlled way, not in a way that it hurts others. The moment you dictate this rule, the suppression will begin to take place immediately. But then the Freudians may lead you to a sort of confession. Then why Freud? Why not Roman Catholicism? There again, they give vent to their suppressed emotions and crimes by going to somebody and laying your heart bare to him and considering it to be a confession. So what is better in Freud than a simple confession? The only difference is that accepting the Freudian philosophy, you have to not unload only yourself, your inner self, but also your pockets to a third person. And this is exactly what is happening. You know, there is a joke in America that was told to me by an Ahmadi neurophysician who was a psychiatrist first. So I asked him why he changed his line. He had to go through all the labor of studying neurology while he was already a full-fledged psychiatrist. So he said, well, my answer would be in the form of a joke. The joke is concerning some definitions. The definition of a psychophant is a person who builds castles in the air. And who is a psychopath? The person who occupies those castles. And who is a psychiatrist? The person who collects the rent. You see? So he said, I did not want to be a rent collector, for nothing. He said, I know it's all total fraud. You go on collecting rent from these poor people, and unless you do that, they will not unload themselves. So they have to unload simultaneously, both within and from their pocket as well. And it doesn't do any good to them. So and again, they can't simply tell a human being everything. This is why they have to pay money for questions. This is against their nature. And to force them, you have to make them pay doubly. While in a prayer, standing up before your Lord at night, how frankly and how freely you can say, Innama ashku basi wa huzuni ilallah. I am only expressing myself, unloading myself to my Lord, who knows these things anyway. I can't hide anything from him. So what element of suppression would be left in such a person? How Islam creates the healthiest possible man? By teaching you suppression in one direction and lack of total reservations in another direction. Yes, please.
Now, I learned about this Nafs-e Ammara and Lawama and Mutmainna from the promised Messiah's Mazmoon, which Bala Raha.
Yes.
And I actually heard your khutbah about Chori Sahab through that tape, because as I said, I don't live here. And you said something which actually touched my heart. You said he was ready day and midday and evening, packed up and to go. Does it represent that he had reached Nafs-e Mutmainna then?
Just a moment, I missed the first part of your question because I was disturbed by what was happening here with the cup of tea. So please repeat, who was this I was referring to?
Hazrat Zahurullah Khan Sahab.
Yes, that's right. Now I have got it. Yes, please. So,
And you said he was ready and packed up.
yes, this is exactly what I was saying. That I believed that he had reached nafs mutmainna. And in that connection, making this claim, why I believed, I explained this.
Yes. Now, are there any parameters?
And I also said, most humbly, that this is not a verdict. I am not a person to give a verdict. I am only hoping and praying. It is only Allah who knows who has reached nafs mutmainna. So the human verdict belongs to a region of thinking well of your brothers. That is permitted, not only permitted, but it is enjoined upon us to do so. So following that injunction, I was thinking well of Chaudhry Sahib, late Chaudhry Sahib, peace be upon him, and I was expressing my view of his conduct as I observed him. And also I prayed and told you to pray that Allah may turn this thinking well of him into reality. And in his eyes too, may he prove to be the one who possesses nafs mutmainna. That was the gist of my khutbah, yes.
Now, are the three concepts, nafs ammara and lawama and mutmainna, interchangeable with zalim, muqtasid and sabiq bil khairat?
Not entirely, but to some extent, yes. Not entirely. Some people have translated this verse in a way as would tally with that subject. But Hazrat Masih Maud has unraveled the mystery of this verse in a completely different way. And there this subject will not be the same as you are discussing.
Let me ask you one last question.
Well, of course you can.
And now in Al Imran part 4, Ummat Muhammadiyya has been designated Khairul Ummat. And I don't know whether this accolade represents its taj or its crown. And no Ummat has prayed so much qualitatively and quantitatively as this Ummat.
Yes, this is
spanning
correct.
over 1400 years.
Yes.
And they prayed for Sirat-e-Mustaqim and Hasna and Salamti, and then they recited Durood Sharif, which is prayer for the second advent of the Holy Prophet, and then Istighfar, which I as a doctor will call it a spiritual broad spectrum antibiotic. And they prayed everywhere, in the homes, mosques, open spaces, and the Grand Mosque in Mecca, and in the Prophet's Mosque in Medina during the Hajj seasons.
Yes.
And the promised Messiah says, मेरी राह को देख देख कर और तरस तरस कर लोग चले गए, और जब मैं आया तो सब ने इनकार कर दिया और माने यहूद और नसारा क्यों. And at another place he says, ये लोग मेंबरों पर चढ़ चढ़ कर.
Listen, before you build it up further, let me remind you of a tradition of Hazrat Rasul Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which tells us, masajiduhum amiratun wa hiya kharabun min al-huda. That is the answer to the whole question you are building up. Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam predicted that although their mosques would be apparently full, but they will be totally devoid of righteousness and truth.
No, but he says, ujibu da'wat ad-da'i da'an.
If you make a dawa, not if you are making a show of a dawa.
No, but
First of all, first of all, when the Holy Prophet tells you that you see a phenomena and you believe this phenomenon is praying before God, I tell you from God that your vision is wrong and distorted, or their action is wrong and distorted. What they are doing is not a worship of God, it is something different, because it is totally devoid of light of God. So when a thing is totally devoid of light of God or honesty of purpose, how could you call it a meaningful prayer? No, prayers, whether they are for good or for bad, have to be meaningful. Otherwise they don't mean anything. In Punjab there are mothers who keep on telling their brothers, their children, to go to hell 100 times a day. or tanu Allah chukke, may God take you away, run. But the moment that child falls ill, then do you see what happens to the mother. Meaningless prayer against or prayer in favor of somebody, if it doesn't mean anything truly, if you're not involved and if it's not done in the right way, it is just nothing. This is why the Holy Quran says that if you swear to God and you don't fulfill that promise, you will be answerable. But if you swear in a manner as you ordinarily do, don't mean anything, then Allah will not bring you to books. So this is how these prayers go waste, because they don't get included in the list, in the category of prayers by Allah. They're just a show business, nothing more. But when you say prayer meaningfully and truly, then for that to be accepted, it is not necessary that you must be a Muslim. The Holy Quran tells us that if a prayer is said right in earnest, then even if you are a mushrik, idolater, even then Allah listens to those prayers, knowing that afterwards you will go turn back to your same crime of idolatry. So this is what has been said in the Holy Quran. So judge all that you have observed in the light of these things. After all, 1400 years ago, Muhammad was told about this phenomenon of worship of God, mosques being full and everything. And he must have conceived, Allah, through Allah's grace, of a situation in which you are now facing. So imagine, Hazrat Akram sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as if he knew about you and the questions which would keep bothering you, and answered them before they were asked. Don't be deceived by such prayers and such worships. They don't mean anything in the sight of Allah.